We often think of forgiveness as a moral concept, but in reality, it is an economic one. Every time someone hurts you, it feels like they have taken something from you, your time, your reputation, or your peace. Naturally, you want them to pay it back. You hold onto a grudge as if it were a debt contract, waiting for an apology or a moment of revenge that may never come. The problem is that holding on to this bad debt is not free. It sits on your emotional balance sheet and drains your daily energy. Every hour you spend replaying the injury, you are paying interest in the form of stress, cortisol, and bitterness. You think you are keeping the other person in prison, but if you look closely, you are the one sitting in the cell. You are the one paying for the electricity and the walls. Jesus taught that unforgiveness is a trap. In his parables, he described it as being handed over to the jailers until the debt is paid. This is a perfect description of the mental state of a resentful person. Your mind becomes a courtroom where the trial never ends. You cannot invest your energy into new projects or healthy relationships because your capital is tied up in a past that cannot be changed. To find peace, you must first recognize that your anger has become a toxic asset. It is no longer protecting you, it is poisoning you. Just as a business must eventually write off a loss to move forward, you must decide to write off this emotional debt. This isn't about the other person being right. It is about you refusing to spend another cent of your life on their mistake. The moment you choose to cancel the debt, you stop the interest payments. You reclaim the mental space that was being occupied by resentment. Forgiveness is a practical financial decision for your soul. It is the act of clearing your balance sheet so that you can finally invest your energy into a future that actually belongs to you. The default setting of the world is retaliation. When someone strikes us, our instinct is to strike back. We call it justice, but it is often just a cycle of pain that never ends. We operate on the logic of an eye for an eye, forgetting that this path eventually leaves everyone blind. If every action requires an equal and opposite reaction of anger, we become slaves to the person who hurt us. Jesus introduced a radical logic: forgive not just once but 70 times 7. This is not a mathematical formula, it is a declaration of infinite freedom. He wasn't teaching us to be doormats or to be weak. He was teaching us how to be the strongest person in the room. It takes very little strength to react, but it takes immense power to remain still and refuse to retaliate. When you refuse to strike back, you break the cycle. You effectively stop the momentum of the conflict. In a game of retaliation, the person who hurt you controls the tempo. They act, and you react. But when you choose to forgive, you take the power back. You decide that their behavior will not dictate your character or your future actions. Radical forgiveness is a strategic move. By refusing to participate in the back and forth of revenge, you protect your own peace and force the situation to a halt. You are choosing to be the circuit breaker in a system that is overheating. This is the only way to ensure that a single moment of pain does not turn into a lifetime of conflict. Do not mistake this for ignoring the truth. It is about acknowledging the hurt, but refusing to let it multiply. You stop the cycle not because the other person deserves it, but because you refuse to be a carrier of the same poison that infected them. Breaking the cycle is the ultimate act of self-mastery. We possess a natural talent for spotting the tiny flaws in other people. We can see a speck of dust in someone else's eye from across the room, yet we remain completely blind to the log in our own. This lack of self-awareness is the primary reason why so many marriages, friendships, and business partnerships fail. We spend all our energy trying to fix others while our own character is in shambles. Jesus taught a fundamental psychological principle: you cannot see clearly to help someone else until you deal with your own vision first. Hypocrisy is not just a moral failure, it is a practical barrier to progress. When you criticize someone for a behavior you also possess, you create a wall of resentment. No one listens to a leader or a partner who demands a standard they do not meet themselves. Focusing on your own log first is the most effective way to change a relationship. It shifts the focus from blame to responsibility. When you stop obsessing over how the other person needs to change and start working on your own patience, integrity, and discipline, the dynamic around you begins to shift. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less, and your own growth more. Real change in any relationship begins with the person looking back at you in the mirror. It is much easier to point a finger than it is to change a habit, but pointing a finger produces no results. By taking ownership of your faults, you create a safe space for others to do the same. You lead by example rather than by instruction. The next time you feel a surge of judgment towards someone else, stop and ask, what is the version of this flaw in my own life? Dealing with your own issues first gives you the clarity and the moral authority to actually help others. Self-awareness is the foundation of every healthy connection you will ever have. There is a common misunderstanding that forgiveness means accepting mistreatment. Many people stay in toxic situations because they believe that being good means being a doormat. But forgiveness and boundaries are not opposites, they are partners. Forgiveness deals with the past, while boundaries protect the future. Jesus was the perfect example of this balance. He was full of grace, yet he spoke the truth even when it was uncomfortable. He didn't hide from conflict to keep a fake peace. He understood that a healthy relationship cannot exist without honesty. If you are constantly silent about things that hurt you, you aren't being loving, you are being dishonest. You can completely forgive someone for their past actions while still deciding that they no longer have a place in your inner circle. Forgiveness is a gift you give to someone who doesn't deserve it. A boundary is a standard you set for someone who wants to remain in your life. One releases the debt, and the other manages the risk. Setting firm boundaries is an act of wisdom, not an act of hate. It is about defining where you end and where someone else begins. If you don't set limits, you will eventually become resentful, and resentment will destroy the very grace you are trying to show. By saying no to certain behaviors, you are actually protecting the possibility of a healthy relationship in the long run. Remember this distinction. Forgiveness releases the person from your grip, but wisdom manages the relationship. You don't have to trust someone just because you've forgiven them. Trust is earned over time through consistent behavior. Live with a heart that is open to forgive, but a mind that is wise enough to protect your peace. In a world that values status, power, and dominance, we are taught to never show weakness. We believe that to be great means to be the one in charge, the one who wins the argument, and the one who has the last word. This constant need to stay on top creates a barrier between us and the people we love. It turns our homes and friendships into battlegrounds where someone always has to lose. Jesus completely reversed this power structure. He taught that the greatest person is not the one with the most servants, but the one who serves the most. He demonstrated that true authority comes from the bottom up, not the top down. When you adopt the mindset of a servant, you stop seeing people as obstacles to overcome and start seeing them as individuals to support. This requires vulnerability. In your family and your friendships, being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness, it is a bridge. It means admitting when you are wrong, sharing your fears, and letting go of the need to be perceived as perfect. When you are vulnerable, you give others permission to be real with you. You stop trying to win every interaction and start trying to understand the other person's perspective. The dynamic of a relationship shifts instantly when one person stops fighting for dominance and starts fighting for the other person's well-being. Service is the ultimate practical tool for conflict resolution. Instead of asking, "How can I get my way?" ask, "How can I serve your needs in this moment?" This doesn't mean neglecting yourself. It means leading with a heart that seeks to add value rather than exert control. Greatness is measured by the quality of your relationships, not the height of your status. By choosing to serve, you build a foundation of trust that can survive any storm. Vulnerability removes the armor that keeps people away, and service builds the house where love can actually live. We all encounter people who are hard to love. These are the individuals who are consistently critical, ungrateful, or confrontational. Our natural reaction is to mirror their behavior, to be cold to those who are cold to us. But Jesus reminded us that there is no greatness in only loving those who love you back. Even the most corrupt people do that. The real challenge and the real growth comes from showing kindness to those who don't deserve it. Compassion is not an emotion, it is a practice. It is the choice to see the difficult person as someone who is likely acting out of their own internal pain or insecurity. Hurt people hurt people. When you recognize that someone's hostility is a reflection of their own struggle rather than a definition of your worth, you gain the ability to respond with calm instead of anger. This doesn't mean you agree with them, but it means you refuse to let their chaos infect your character. This practice is actually a form of self-protection. If you respond to a cynical person with cynicism, they have successfully changed you. They have pulled you down into their world. By maintaining kindness in the face of rudeness, you protect your own heart from becoming hard and cynical like the world around you. You remain the master of your own internal environment. Showing kindness to difficult people acts as a disruptor. Most difficult people expect a fight. They are prepared for it. When they receive unexpected compassion or a calm response, it often disarms them. It forces them to confront their own behavior because you are no longer giving them a reason to justify their anger. In the end, how you treat difficult people says everything about you and very little about them. It is a test of your maturity and the strength of your foundation. By choosing compassion over retaliation, you preserve your peace and prove that your internal state is not for sale. Final peace is not something you achieve once, it is a daily maintenance task. Just as a house accumulates dust if it isn't cleaned, our minds accumulate resentment, frustration, and regret through the course of a normal day. If you don't intentionally clear these out, they pile up until your internal space feels heavy and cramped. You cannot think clearly or act effectively in a cluttered mind. The wisdom of not letting the sun go down on your anger is a practical rule for emotional hygiene. It means you refuse to carry today's emotional garbage into tomorrow. When you hold on to anger overnight, it begins to ferment into bitterness, which is much harder to remove. By making it a habit to settle your internal accounts before the day ends, you ensure that you wake up with a clean slate. Clearing out negative emotions is about keeping your internal space ready for what matters. Negative energy is a squatter. It occupies room in your head without paying rent. Every minute you spend harboring a grudge is a minute you aren't spending on your goals, your family, or your personal growth. A life without the weight of past hurts is a life that has the energy to create, to love, and to build. This daily practice of letting go is what leads to a light heart. It is the realization that your energy is a finite resource. You simply don't have enough of it to power both your future dreams and your past grievances. Choosing to declutter your emotions is a strategic decision to prioritize your productivity and your happiness over your right to be offended. A meaningful future requires a light heart. When you are no longer weighed down by the emotional baggage of yesterday, you move faster and see further. Make it your goal to end every day with nothing left on the table. Forgive quickly, let go often, and keep your internal world clean. This is the only way to live with the freedom and energy required to make a real impact.